Good morning, everyone. Packed house for all the right reasons. It's a great pleasure to be here this morning. I bring greetings from Washington, D.C., where I am currently a resident. And, of course, our distinction is we, along with New York City, are the other major city in the United States to adopt a building performance law, to put into law a policy that will require retrofits of buildings over time. We are watching very closely our big brother to the north as you embark on retrofitting 50,000 buildings over the next few years. We don't have quite that many buildings, and federal buildings are exempt, which reduces the load to some extent. Our bills are different. Ours is focused on energy. Yours is focused on carbon. Good for you. Good decision. And we hope to learn a lot from you and will contribute to the discussion, hopefully between cities. I love what John said about a market for energy efficiency and carbon. I love this idea of coming up with great prescriptive packages for specific sectors. I think those are really great opportunities to collaborate, not just within New York, but between major cities. I believe Washington State is also headed in our direction. So hopefully this is a bit contagious, a positive contagion that can make its way across the country. It's my pleasure to introduce three very exciting speakers. We have a panel which is going to be focused on innovation and case studies. There's a lot we can learn from not only within New York, but across the country and, in fact, around the world. We're going to see case studies from Europe, which involve retrofitting multifamily residential buildings. We're going to see a case study right here in New York, about 80 acres, right in the middle of the city, which is a best practice in being able to significantly reduce energy use and carbon in multifamily housing. And we're going to first start with a success story from Chicago, the Midwest, where I was born. An approach there that has yielded significant outcomes. It is my great pleasure to first introduce a tool. Every conference needs a tool. Now, we learned that we can hear about yogurt and ice cream, I think it was, from our apartment building using an app. You can also interact with the speakers and the panelists through an app called Slido on your phone. I don't know who names these things, but somebody obviously younger than me. I believe it's called Slido and not Slido or Slido or whatever. And what you would do is you would go to this site, you would enter UGC, and then it will allow you to ask questions and answer surveys and the like. So those of you who want to be engaged digitally in the discussions today, feel free to do that. You can also send questions to the panel. So back to the agenda at hand. Ann Evans is Chief Executive Officer of an organization called Elevate Energy, and she's going to tell us some great things going on in Chicago. Ann, welcome.
Thanks, Clay, and good morning. Can you all hear me? Awesome. Okay. I'm really happy to be here. I brought my notebook because I'm hoping to learn a lot from you. In New York, you're way ahead of us in Chicago. I'm going to talk to you about what we've been doing in Chicago, which is a voluntary market. There we go. And how we've been working. And I'm hoping to take back a lot of notes to Chicago because it's always helpful in Chicago if we say, look what they're doing in New York. So I'm excited to learn. So at Elevate Energy, we're very much focused on the through line from research to policy to implementation in order to move systems. And we've been able, by focusing very much on the affordable multifamily stock in Chicago, been able to retrofit over 48,000 units of affordable multifamily housing with a very robust pipeline. The reason we focused this way is because we wanted to create repeatable processes which would help scale our part of the market. And John, we're focused on doing that, hopefully to help get you that optimal curve that you're looking for so that we're not in trouble in 2030. So 50,000 buildings in 10 years, that sounds really intimidating. However, I forgot to warn you that I am forever optimistic, hopefully in a good way and not in an annoying way. And I believe that this actually creates a huge opportunity, and that you can be successful if you focus in on understanding your building stock and its subsegments. I think, Nicole, you talked about the breadth of the multifamily market in New York, but if you may also see that there are a lot of repeated subsegments in building typologies. And that creates the opportunity to create replicable strategies that work for that subsegment. And then I think even more importantly, it creates the opportunity for you to create long-term relationships. I wanted to point out that over 50% of our pipeline is repeat customers. That means owners, property managers, lenders, and contractors. And by building these long-term relationships, it really helps make it easy, which is what it's going to have to be if it's going to get done. So in Chicago, we looked at our housing stock, and again, we're focused on the affordable multifamily stock, and found that there were 15 major typologies, but that 3 of them were the vast majority of the stock. So by focusing on 3 building types, which I'm going to show you, we can reach over 90% of the structures or buildings and over 70% of the housing units. This is one of our more frequent types. It's a 3-story walk-up. We find a lot of similarities between our housing stock and your housing stock. A lot of steam and hot water systems, and we've been able to create replicable packages. They're not all unique because, of course, every building is a snowflake, but they allow us to create replicable packages with good incentives and good pricing. Again, we had to make it really attractive to building owners because this is an entirely voluntary program. You get the pleasure of being part of Retrofit Chicago, and the mayor is happy with you, but that's the major incentive. We're now moved down to focus on even smaller buildings that are both owner-occupied and investor-occupied. We like to think of them as scattered site multifamily, so you may have one owner that owns 20 buildings that are all relatively similar, and we can work throughout that whole portfolio. So taking a portfolio approach has been very helpful as well. And then here's our next challenge. We have a large number of frame buildings, smaller buildings, and we're hoping to learn a lot from Loic and what he's going to talk about, because these are great, we think, opportunities for overcladding and standardized systems that help us get to the next level. Finally, I wanted to say that this works because it's simple. It works because building owners are seeing an increase in net operating income. The buildings are better. They function better, their maintenance costs are lower, and building owners see the benefits. Contractors are bringing us work because they're getting those jobs, and then tenants are seeing increased comfort, reduced bills, and improved health. So I leave you with this as an example of how you can approach this grand problem you're facing, and look forward to listening to the other presenters and learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann, and a wonderful way to kick off the panel. Great story. 50,000 units in Chicago, buildings that look somewhat similar but a little bit different to those in New York, so something we can certainly learn from. Our next speaker is Tom Feeney. He's Vice President of Operations and Engineering for the Peter Cooper Village, Stuyvesant town, I guess you'd call it campus, 80 acres in the middle of Manhattan with a huge number of units. So a great example right here close to home, and it's been really fun to hear Peter talk about what they've been able to do there. So welcome, Peter. Tom, sorry.
Thanks. Morning, everybody. Peter Cooper Village, Stuyvesant Town is it's a historical property of the city. I've had the pleasure of being in charge of operations there for the last 12 and a half years, and it's been a great ride. And we strive on our energy efficiency, and we've done a tremendous amount of projects over the last 12 years that I'm going to try and share with you guys today. A little history on Peter Cooper Village, Stuytown. It is 56 structures in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It's 110 addresses. It was constructed. It's a post-World War II complex. Constructed between 1942 and 47, and encompasses 80 acres of landscape property in the Lower East Side. Staffing, I roughly have about 500 people running the property. 250 of them are trades personnel that keep the place up and running every day, and the rest are office staff, resident services, security, and a ton of people that keep the boat afloat every day. Getting there in 2006, it was, MetLife took care of the property. They did some pilot programs, but myself, I came out of the commercial industry. And with the commercial buildings, you really couldn't do anything without seeing what you're looking at, seeing the building, seeing how it's operating. And a building management system or energy management system was a high priority for me when I got there. Took me a little bit to convince management to spend the money, but it was money well spent. The first thing we did with the building management system was, utilities on this property, you can imagine, are massive. They're 1/3 of the operating cost of the property. And of course, new owners are going to come in, and the first thing they're going to want to do is see where we can save, right? We got to pay the bills. The first thing we looked at, utilities were all included with their apartments. So the easiest utility for me to try and manage was the steam. We take district steam from Con Edison. There's 18 control rooms that feed the property heat and hot water. And every one of them, have hot water heaters. There's 100% redundancy in every control room. And the easiest way for me to control was to put some kind of a management system in that would control the heat going up into the apartments. The only way for me to do that was to manage it from the basement area with apartment sensors. We put apartment sensors in 3 apartments in every line, and we were able to manage through zone valves the heating system in the buildings. That was the first and foremost thing I wanted to get in on the property, so that we could start, realizing, where our issues are, where we need to, save money, where we can save money. It gives you a base for data collection. It gives you, global points. It gives you so much for for the property, for the operations of the property. What we wound up doing was we ended up putting the building management system in first, and then we went right for the steam. Steam was something that was not controlled by the tenants directly, I was able to attack it from, the base building and install a control system that was able to save 15% on the actual steam usage at the property. The LEDs was in 15. We started looking at LEDs. I think everybody in the city's looking at LEDs. There's a ton of incentives out there, or were out there. I know they've diminished a little bit over time, but the first thing we did was the stairwells. Stairwells, we have 220 stairwells on the property. Those lights on 24/7, 50-watt fluorescent fixtures. We swapped them out for new 22-watt bi-level LED fixtures, and which decreased to 7 watts when the stairs were unoccupied. And we tied all the fixtures back to a single inverter in the basements. That project alone was $4.5 million, changing almost 6,000 fixtures, and we wound up saving, at the end of it, over 1 million kilowatt hours. The project paid for itself in 4 years, so that was very good for the property. Common area lighting. We did almost 13,000 fixtures. We changed 26-watt triple CFLs to 7-watt triples, and that project, after incentives, paid back in less than a year. The primary heat exchangers. Primary heat exchangers was an end-of-life replacement, but it allowed us to look at different ways to control. There's so much good stuff out there nowadays. We ended up putting electronic actuators on the incoming steam for the heaters. We ended up putting in preheat exchangers, so we're able to preheat the water before it goes into the heat exchanger, saving hundreds of pounds of M-pounds of steam in the process. Garage VFDs. Garage VFDs was another low-hanging fruit project where we were running fans, exhaust fans in 6 garages. We had 16 fans that were running 24/7. Nobody ever complained about the fans when they were running 24/7. The second we put them on VFDs and carbon monoxide detectors, people started going into the garages and shutting down the fans in the middle of the night. It was funny because we ended up, dealing with a few residents that never, paid attention. But when you give them a rent abatement, they stop hearing it. So another good project. That project paid for itself in a year's time. And then we went to, as time progressed, we went to look further into where we could save and what we were doing as far as load. And we went to interval meter installation. This gave us a good look at how the property operates, where our peaks are, and it helps us make smart decisions on projects going forward with storage possibly down the line. And it helped us look at, some of the projects I'm going to show you now going forward of what we made decisions on. And while all of this was going on, ownership was looking at me like, what can we do to make a big impact? So I've been on the property, like I said, for 12 and a half years, always looked at our roofs. We had 22 acres of roof, underutilized. The paybacks are, in my early, tenure there were really not there. They were so far out that people really weren't looking at them. But they got better over time, and everybody liked the idea. So what we did was we looked at the 22 acres of roof we have, and we came up with a system, a 3.8 meg solar array that we installed on the property over the next year, or I should say 14 months. This photo is June of 18, when we were about halfway done with Stuyvesant, and the project progressed and we finished it. Oh, I didn't think we were getting sound. This is something we put on our website for the residents to look at. So it's a cool project. It kind of sets the bar for the property. I mean, the property has 62 electric accounts that, there's a typo there. There's 62 individual electric accounts that all the panels feed into. The total, the 3.8 meg is about 6% of our total electric load. So we end up using most of what we produce. There are some accounts that we get monetary credit for because of the next project that I'm going to show you, where we had to slice up some of the projects, some of the accounts to feed that project as well. But the project started out, we are a partner in the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, and I've met quite a few people and good people that, we work with and talk to with all the stuff that we do, and we swap information. The cool roof coating installation was something we did prior to the solar installation. It was, everybody worries about putting solar panels on the roof. What am I going to do when I have to change a roof? There is going to be work there eventually. Just got to be strategic in planning. The cool roof coating was a way for us to extend the warranties on our roofs. It ended up helping us waterproof all the framework and everything that we attach the panels to. The panels sit directly on the roof, and it gives us a little bit of curb appeal from about 10,000 feet. So there was a lot of back and forth with Con Ed, with interconnections and the meters that had to go in place with them. But we completed the project in January, and we're looking to, and so far it's producing better than we expected. So we're hoping for a good year with the system in place. The next big thing is combined heat and power. Steam is a massive utility for us, as well as electric, but the tenants have control of their electric. Steam, we can try and take the place of it with a combined heat and power plant. So we looked at a portion of the property back in the southeast corner of the property, where we could take a group of buildings. We're fortunate where we have garages, and we're able to run piping and do some excavation without, excavating throughout the property. But what we did was we sat with Con Ed, and we worked out a game plan where we will produce. It's a 2.3 meg plant that we're looking at, and we'll produce the power and put it back into Con Ed's grid, and we'll use the waste heat for hot water and heating in. Originally, it was going to be 12 buildings in that section of the property, but we took another look at it. Ownership was excited about what we did in the first half, and they said, what can we do to enhance it? So we took another look at it, and we realized that if we excavate a little bit under one of the roads, catch the next garage, we could increase the amount of buildings we pick up and increase the efficiency of the combined heat and power plant from 62% to 82%. So it was almost a no-brainer. And we did start excavation in that in January. So we are full steam ahead. Piping is going in. We've picked the engines. We've chosen the boilers, and we're working with Con Ed. When I was talking earlier about you can't remote net meter both solar and CHP in the same accounts. So we had to go through all our accounts and figure out what accounts equal the power that was going to be the output of the plant, and we ended up remote net metering them to some other accounts that we have on property. There'll be a new building in the corner of the property above the garage, and there will be a stack encased in the brick, so it's kind of hidden when you look at it from the mechanical area. So this is kind of the design of the plant going into the building. You can see where the Con Ed electric gas is coming in. You know, our gas consumption will increase, obviously, but the electric output will go back into Con Ed's grid. This is what I was talking about, is the steam hubs. We're going from that main plant area, we go through the buildings, we cross one of our private loop roads, and into the next garage where we pick up, in total, 24 buildings. So, and this is really giving you the blue and the green are getting the electric. Those are the electric offsets. The electric and heating are the green, and the main plant is just steam and hot water is the yellows. So the blue ones are really outliers. They are getting, those are the ones that are really getting credit, and the other buildings, the green and the yellow, are actually getting served by the new CHP. So this is an initiative we're excited about. Looking forward to finishing it by 2020, July of 2020. We have that on the books. And this is an idea. We didn't want to lose, green. The greenscape is one of our most valuable assets at the property, and I try not to load the property up with equipment. So what we did here was we established a building that has a green roof, so that we still keep the greenscape, and people can enjoy looking from above down at the greenery. We're incorporating a greenhouse for tenant interaction. That will be part of the project, and it's the path. We've like I said, we've been on this sustainable path for some time now, and stuff does not go unnoticed. We've been working with the Mayor's Office of Sustainability in the carbon challenge, and we've reduced our carbon footprint 16.5% since our baseline year. We are looking to get down into the 30% by 2025, and I think we're on a good path to do so. The property, with all the work that has gone on, has been recognized by the U.S. Green Building Council, and this year we received LEED for Communities Platinum, which is a new category that LEED has come up with, and we are the first community in the city to receive that award, and we are proud of it. And that's all I got. No more fire alarms.
Thanks, Tom. That was really inspirational, and certainly puts us on a good path for 50,000 buildings by 2030. Our final panelist is Loic Chappoz. He's the multifamily team leader at NYSERDA, and he's going to talk about a very exciting project which started in the Netherlands. Goedemorgen. It's the only Dutch word I know, so I'll use it here. Loic is French, so he doesn't even know what I said. So looking forward to hearing about this very innovative project.
Yeah, that is a lot more Dutch than I do know, actually. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my building. This is my building here in Manhattan. It was built in 1920, precisely. This is what was the most popular car in 1920. Connoisseurs might have recognized a Ford Model T. It was state-of-the-art in 1920, probably very exciting for people who like cars. This is one of the most popular cars today, one of the most sold cars, I should say, today. Looks quite different from a Ford Model T. Gives you a lot more amenities, might I say, a lot more comfort, central AC, for example, central heating, a lot of those things that did not exist in 1924 cars. So of course, the building I live in has been upgraded over the last century, going from single glazed window to double pane windows. But for the most part, the bones and the guts of the buildings have not changed. There's still a newer version of a nice Scotch Marine steam boiler in the building, and still that non very controllable steam system. Just open windows is what you have to do. Overall, if we take a step back and look at a slightly bigger picture, the construction industry has also evolved on a trajectory that is slightly different than the rest of the U.S. economy over the last century. This graph is about productivity. The top line is how the productivity of the overall economy changed since 1995. It increased about 40%. The bottom line is how the productivity of the construction industry decreased about 15% since 1995, actually going back to the exact level that we had in 1946, right after World War II. So that doesn't mean that construction companies today are not doing a good job. They are delivering buildings that are a lot more comfortable, a lot more reliable than buildings in 1920. What that curve shows is that it's taking more and more manpower and hence more and more cost to build those buildings today. But when I look at this curve, I'm not thinking, well, the construction industry is not really doing well. I'm seeing mostly opportunity, and the opportunity for the construction industry to catch up in great part with how other parts of the U.S. economy has evolved. And that could really help us not only meet the targets for Local 87 for 2024 and 2030, but what is likely to be the targets for Local 97 in 2040 and 2050. In other words, it can really help us go from a Ford Model T to a Toyota Corolla in terms of retrofitting existing buildings. So how do we do that? So according to the same McKinsey report the graph was from, but most importantly, actual experience on the ground in several countries in Europe, those are three of the key things that need to happen for that transformation to occur. On-site execution needs to be improved. The supply chain needs to change dramatically. And that can happen through more technology and more innovation. More practically, it means going from on-site application of insulation products, for example, to prefabricated panelized solutions that are installed in just a few days, just a couple of days on site, turning the building on the right into a net zero energy building with just a couple of people on site. So a lot less labor, which can be attractive in today's job market, but also with the scale we're faced with retrofitting 50,000 buildings over the next decade or so. Same idea with mechanical system. That means going from different mechanical system cobbled together to deliver all the energy services that we need for 2030 and beyond, which probably includes active ventilation and cooling, central cooling. So going from this piecemeal approach to mechanical parts that are manufactured in a factory, then shipped on site and installed in less than a day on site by just two people. And all that at a fraction of the cost. Those pods cost about half of what it used to cost to build this system. And it also provides real-time monitoring and remote maintenance. So also provide new services, just like the Toyota Corolla is providing new services compared to the Ford T. So those innovations are very exciting, and it's very easy to anchor on the technical innovation. But what they are also a realization of is dramatic changes in the supply chain. This is at rough cut what the supply chain of a project looks like today. If an owner wants to do a retrofit, they're going to probably hire an architect, a general contractor. The architect might hire an engineering company, maybe an energy consultant. The general contractor is going to hire subcontractors that are going to have a bunch of suppliers to get all the supply. So there's a number of layers, number of complexity. Very often the design for each project is unique and not necessarily reused. And what they've been able to achieve in the Netherlands, where the pictures you've seen come from, but also in other countries in Europe, is really streamline that supply chain. You still have all the suppliers. You need the same installation product. You probably need, windows, a heat pump, controls, depending what you're doing on your project. But you now have component suppliers that are creating those integrated panelized solution, those mechanical pods, also integrated roof solution that integrate insulation, solar panels when that's appropriate. And then you have a solution provider that is buying a limited number of products from a limited number of suppliers, and those components are a lot more standardized. And it becomes a lot easier for that solution provider to deliver a turnkey project to the owner with a lot more certainty on how the solution is going to perform, not only from an energy standpoint, but also from a comfort standpoint for the resident, from a maintenance standpoint as well. And this transformation, both on the technical side and on the supply chain side, has really enabled scaling in Europe. They've done over 4,500 retrofit projects. Those same solutions are used in new construction projects, over 5,000 of them to this day, and all of that for about less than half of the price of the first pilot going to net zero. So we thought it was a pretty powerful model. After doing a good amount of work to see if that would work in New York and in the US, we decided to launch our own initiative called Retrofit New York to support the creation here on the ground of the similar solutions that are scalable, that are cost-effective, that are standardized, and when we can really drive industrialization. I think it's especially important in a city like New York City, where we have maybe the highest labor cost for construction in the world, according to the latest data I've seen, but also it's really hard to find people to do the work today. So we've launched our first design phase about a year ago. We had 6 really great teams come in with 6 owners that really wanted to do that. The teams and owners working together. I see a few people from the teams in the audience today. We had 3 projects upstate. Those are the top of the slide, typical 2-story building for the upstate housing stock. And then 3 projects here in New York City in 3 different boroughs of New York City, or neighborhood rather, of New York City. Typical multifamily buildings, those 4 to 6-story walk-up buildings are really the bulk of the square footage of multifamily. All 6 teams came up with solutions that, if they were not quite reaching net zero energy, they were all approaching net zero. They were all fairly innovative. This is a rendering of one of those projects. This project is actually not going to move forward with this exact scope here, but it's still going to move forward with a scope that is going to save more than 40%. And for example, is going to include domestic hot water heat pump that we talked about a little bit this morning. We have some other projects that are anticipated to move to construction. We should be able to announce one in the very next few days. We're waiting for financing to close, basically, make sure that the project goes forward. But beyond the pilots that we're going to have in New York City and in the rest of the state, we've learned a lot on how to get to net zero energy over the last year, with some really good successes. I talked about the 6 viable solutions. All 6 solutions could be built today. Several will be built. What was really very interesting to see is how the owners were fully engaged in those projects, working hand in hand with the teams. We are also starting to see some movement on the supply chain. There are companies that are looking into supplying those panels, companies that are coming together to start supplying those energy pods, so doing heating, ventilation, cooling, hot water, all in one system that can be industrialized. It was, of course, not easy, and the road ahead is not necessarily easy either. The main challenge, you're not going to be surprised, is cost. This is not something that we anticipate to be fully cost-effective today. We're reaching the point in Europe where it is cost-effective, meaning that the savings and the operational cost savings are paying for those projects. We're hoping to reach that point in the next few years in New York as well, going a little bit faster than Europe, just stealing a bunch of ideas from them, basically shamelessly, or rather working with them hand in hand. Electrification of hot water is something all teams looked at closely. It is still a little bit of a challenge in larger building, especially when you don't have a lot of rooms to go to heat pump and pull condensers around the building on the roof. The supply chain is, we're at the beginning of the transformation. So there is still challenges at the supply chain. To the great part, the different pieces that we need for the solution exist, including panelized insulation solutions, but they are still expensive today, and this is where we're intensifying our work to really bring the cost down over the next few years. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your very inspiring case studies and examples and innovation. I'd just like to ask everybody a short question, given the interruption in the panel today. And I'm going to start with Anne. And a few people told me to ask you this because we're very intrigued. Dr. Evans, yes, buildings are a snowflake, but you've identified 3 standard solutions. Can you tell us a little bit about those standard solutions? Because we know we inherently believe every building is different, therefore it needs a custom solution. I think inherently we believe it'll be through standardization that we can reduce cost and improve financing. You seem to have figured out how to do that without telling us.
Thank you. So we aim for 30% savings or greater, and we do that by focusing on all the building systems, so it's comprehensive. So we are looking at the building envelope, air sealing insulation. We are upgrading mechanicals, including controls, and which provide us the opportunity to do ongoing operations and maintenance. So we're looking at the data and able to go back in and tweak the buildings. We're looking at lighting solutions and DHW systems. I think that's what we've been doing, but we're also excited about the opportunity of going much, much deeper and looking at overcladding, and in particular, that last set of building types I showed you, which is a frame construction, we think is optimal for overcladding with the mechanicals in the pod, as Loic described, because we actually have the space to be able to do that. So,
great, thank you. Question to the audience. We have to retrofit 50,000 buildings by 2030. How many more Toms do we need in the city of New York? A few? We need a lot more Toms. That's worth applause. So Tom's actually done everything I read about. And that's what's really exciting about a great operations leader, someone who really understands the economics. Outside of cloning or something controversial like that, how ready are we from a technology expertise, skill, training, education, as a seasoned professional on both the commercial side and with your current role? How do we get ready for this and prepare? And what kind of a gap is there today?
Well, I see, New York is an amazing city, right? I mean, we have operating engineers throughout the city, union, non-union. I think where the city thrives now is mostly on the commercial side. Most of your operating engineers are union guys that are well trained within the union fold. They have great training programs. Some of the other unions, like 32 and 94, both have great training programs. There's many courses out there that guys can take. I think where we're going to be, need more help is on the multifamily side. I happen to be fortunate where, I have a rather large property, and, most of my staff are union staff. I do have local 94 engineers that operate the property and manage my heating systems. I'm window unit air conditioner, so there's not a lot of innovation there at this point. But the heating side is a tremendous amount of our focus. I think commercially, it's like anything, right? I mean, you get guys in there, hungry guys that are in there to feed off of the older guys that have the experience and the training. We'll get there. I think we'll get there. I think there's a ton of stuff out there. There's a ton of stuff coming, and look, we have a lot of work to do, I think, in the next few years, and I'm sure we'll gear up for it.
Great. Finally, a question for Loic. We've been talking about scalable models, and there certainly is a potentially scalable model in the U.S. that we didn't talk about, and that is energy savings performance contracting, or ESCOs. As I think many of us know, ESCOs have been much more popular in the public sector than they have in the private sector. I guess the one huge exception would be the Empire State Building retrofit that I was involved in. We remanufactured 6,514 windows on the 5th floor and saved 35% of cooling load, and ended up with a project that saved 38% energy with a 3.3-year payback. That's pretty extraordinary. Tony Malkin, who owned the Empire State Building, and then proceeded to retrofit all of his properties because he said it would be fiscally irresponsible not to. So there's a bright icon, if you will, on applying a scalable process to the private sector, but almost all the work's in the public sector. $8 billion were invested in ESCOs last year, which is more than all the state and utility programs across the country. But when we look at multifamily housing, and when we look at residential, and we look at many of the types of buildings that are going to have to be retrofit in New York, we're a bit challenged due to the diversity and other reasons. There are, in fact, ESCO projects around public housing, ranging between 3 and maybe 10,000 units, but certainly not with the kind of scale and potential really deep retrofits that we've seen in Energiesprung. Could you comment just on how applicable is the ESCO model, and should there be some efforts to try to take advantage of that as a North American flavor of what you've been able to demonstrate, or not you personally, but the Dutch have been able to demonstrate there?
It's an hard question that I might return to the ESCO. I think the challenge that we're seeing right now with applying or using ESCO models for multifamily is how disaggregated the multifamily sector is beyond large portfolios like the New York City Housing Authority. It's not really applicable. At least that's what we're hearing from the ESCO. One challenge also that we're seeing is that every project is fairly unique, meaning you would need the ESCO company to understand what the project is, to be able to, is there going to be savings? Do I want to invest in that? One thing that could help with that is really that standardization. When you have standardized products, you know exactly what system's going in a given building type, exactly what panelized solutions are going to be used. You've done it, a few hundred times, and so you know what the performance is going to be. You're really reducing that upfront cost, and one of the hopes is that this is going to enable aggregation and larger pipeline, a little bit like you've done in Chicago as well. So today in the multifamily sector, this is really challenging beyond those large portfolio. We're really hoping that standardization not only of product but also of performance and outcome is going to help with the ESCO model and help the ESCOs invest in multifamily in the future.
Great. I think we will need them. All right, let's turn to you. We are looking at the questions you have texted into the software. You can't see them, so I will read them. Couple questions on electrification. Could be a new term to some. Many of you have brought up electrification. There we go. Isn't that cool? So who would like to explain what it is and why it's important and how it factored into your strategies? I think both in the multi-housing and anything you would want to add. Obviously, generating lots of your own electricity has you moving in that direction as well.
Well, I could start, and again, in our context, I would say electrification of hot water systems does not necessarily save money, but it does save carbon typically, particularly if your grid is very renewable. So I think that as part of an electrification strategy, it's an important step because in our market, and I believe in this market, most of the hot water load is still natural gas fired.
And so just to answer maybe the first part, what is meant by electrification of hot water. So it's really generating hot water with electricity. efficiently. So typically currently with air-to-water heat pumps, where we're pulling the heat out of the air to dump it into the water. I think it's really important to go towards electrification, which I think is widely thought as the pathway towards decarbonization of the sector. I think it will yield value as well. Sure, if you look at the cost of electricity today compared to the cost of gas, especially in New York City, you might think, well, that's going to be a tough thing. But the cost of gas is not the only element in the equation. There's Local 97 is bringing another element in the discussion. I think heat pumps combined with storage as well are bringing flexibility on where the energy, or when, the energy can be consumed, and that's bringing some flexibility to the grid, which is also probably going to turn into value fairly soon. This is one of the things that the state of New York is trying to do, reforming the energy vision. Really just changing how we consume energy as well. So it's going to be increasingly this ability to interact with the grid and balance the grid is going to be increasingly important with a grid that is fueled by more and more renewable, and by also a grid that has different peaks with electrification of heating as well.
And me, I mean, given the property and the projects I have down the pike here with CHP, I'm really looking for that hot water load from the plant. So electric is really not in my path right now. Not to say that it won't be in the future in some of the areas on property. This is, I'm not doing all the buildings at this point. With CHP, I'm only doing 25% roughly of the property, and we're looking into the future at how we're going to handle the rest of the property and give us some resiliency going forward.
I mean, CHP has some inherent advantages. It's about twice as efficient as just a traditional gas-fired power plant squirting electrons at you.
Yeah.
And I think your project is one of the best examples of kind of systems level thinking, where you've been able to come up with kind of an optimal allocation of energy generation. You've got PV, you've got the central control, and I wouldn't be surprised if someday, if storage gets cheaper, you'll be integrating that and perhaps a microgrid as well. So I think we need to look at it at an individual home basis, but perhaps even more important, at a systems level, which I think you've essentially done. Okay, let's look at the next question. I'm not sure I'm in control here. I'm clearly not in control. Somebody's in control. Oh, you're in control. All right. Why don't we scan a few more questions? Have you pre-selected some for us, or?
Yes, but we can give you more if you want.
We're only looking at one here.
This is a new one, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think we just answered that. Next.
Coach?
Please mention something about insulating the efficient. Oh, building envelope. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Monitoring controls, cool things, heat pumps. But how about back to the basics? And of course, the energy sprung is a good example of not having to go inside a building structure and add insulation, which is very, very difficult. The innovation there is actually coming from the outside in. So maybe just a few words on how important is that to your strategy, and maybe in Chicago is insulation and building envelope a critical part of your 30% savings?
Yeah. So. Insulation and work on envelope is hard. It's expensive. If you don't do it from the outside, it's also disruptive for the tenants. It becomes a lot cheaper and a lot less disruptive if you industrialize it. But it's also really needed. It makes everything else easier. Basically, once you have a well-insulated, well-sealed envelope, you can really downsize your heating and cooling system. You also make your tenants a lot happier. I mean, comfort can definitely be improved in multifamily buildings in New York City and probably elsewhere as well. So it is definitely a piece of reaching, I think, the 2030 targets of Local 97, definitely the targets that we're anticipating beyond 2030 for Local 97. So it's a need. So this is something on which we're focusing both in terms of pilot and in terms of R&D. at NYSERDA to really reduce the cost and making easier to implement. We're really seeing that as something that is necessary to make the rest of the equation easier and cheaper as well.
One thing I would add, I managed to make my way through the 100-page report that you guys wrote at NYSERDA after the visit to the Netherlands. And what was fascinating in swapping out fairly traditional hot water or other heating sources, by super insulating the building, you were able to put in an air-to-water heat pump, which would normally have less capacity, but it has enough capacity for a more efficient home. And this is like channeling Amory Lovins, right? So thinking at a systems level, investing a little more in insulation and envelope resulted in a much lower cost and a different technology option for the heating systems, key enabler. How about Chicago, which is really cold?
Insulating the building envelope is part of every retrofit project. It's really critical to reducing the overall load of the heating and cooling requirements of the building, and it's something we do every single time.
What do you do with the tenants?
We communicate, we educate. We're very courteous, and they feel better afterwards. We're also always adding mechanical ventilation, so we're really improving the air quality, and we really focus on the public health benefits of living in a better building.
Bonus question. We could spend all day talking about paybacks and return on investment and cost savings. How important is it to actual tenants and homeowners? How do they trade off an economic decision versus comfort, health, wellness, and all the multiple benefits of energy efficiency? Maybe speak to that and give us a little advice on how we might market this better.
Okay, that's a huge question, and it's not on the slide. But I think there are people make decisions for different reasons. I think everybody cares about the health of their family, and in particular their children, and that is a message that always resonates. And then, end of the day, it's always about saving money. So I think that some people are experiencing a lot of energy insecurity, and they understand very well the tensions between heat and eat. And so they're making those trade-offs every day. So I think it's complex. You know, we're complex creatures, and we have a lot of drivers. But I think health is always a message that resonates in saving money.
This is our final question. So how do we create a movement, or how do we need a campaign? What's the best way to sell this? Your ownership has always supported sustainability. They've followed that up with investment, and you've become a leader and a differentiator in the market here in Manhattan. What's your advice to others that either want to influence those who will be making those retrofit decisions, or how do we avoid the wait till the last minute that John showed in his slides? How do we get ahead of the curve?
Well, I mean, you got to get ownership on board. I mean, I think obviously, whether it's somebody in a single family house or it's somebody who owns a portfolio of properties, when you're dealing with bean counters and you attack smaller projects on a smaller level and show them that there is savings, start small before you go big. And that's pretty much the philosophy I've followed at Stuytown is to, take advantage of, incentives that are out there, take advantage of programs that are out there for everybody to get involved with, where it minimizes the cost to the owners, and you start showing return on those smaller investments, and they start believing in the process, and you're able to get bigger as you move along.
Great. And then last word, Loic. So what have the Dutch learned and in promoting their innovative system, and What have you learned in trying to bring it to New York?
I would say we've learned that the cost, the financing is definitely a key point. This is often what gets the project to go or not at the end. This is clearly not the only thing owners care about and want to work on. Granted that we've engaged probably owners that are really at the forefront of that innovation curve, but they are very much interested in providing buildings that are more comfortable, work better, less tenant complaints. So it's really, to me, it's about broadening the equation of energy beyond just the return on investment. And I think this is something our industry has not been doing a great job at. So it goes back to kind of the non-energy benefits. And one thing that we're looking into right now at NYSERDA is, could there be value, and by that I mean monetary value associated to those non-energy benefit. I think Local Law 97 is bringing energy to the forefront of a lot of people. There's another law that has been a little bit shadowed by Local Law 97, which is the building energy label that's going to be on every New York City, large New York City building starting in 2020. So that's hopefully also going to bring energy and everything that is connected to energy, health, comfort, cost to the forefront of mind of residents as well. I think we need to attack that problem from the different aspects of decision making.
Great way to end the panel. Please thank me in recognizing our great panelists and the great ideas and examples they've shared with us.